Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today on Political Economy, we are going to be looking at four key concepts. These concepts are often attributed to as Marxist concepts, and these concepts are the means of production, the forces of production, the relations of production, and the mode of production. We are not just going to try and understand these concepts, but also look at the relationship that exists among them. For a better understanding of these concepts, we're going to be relying more on the use of graphical representation, such as the use of pictures and diagrams, to be able to explain this better. So stick to the very end of this video to learn about this. Let's get started. The means of production. The means of production are referring to those physical tools, the resources, and the infrastructure used to produce goods and services. So when we talk about the means of production, think of things like the land, the factories, the machine, the raw materials. In fact, all those things used in production, because without this, production simply cannot take place. For example, for you to produce, you need a land and you need simple tools, be it like cutlass, shovels, hoe, etc., or mechanized tools like the tractor, industrial machine, and also you need resources such as raw materials. And most times, all of this takes place in a factory. So it is the ownership of this means of production that determines power dynamics in the society. This is because whoever controls this means of production controls power. But then this land, tools, factories, technology, and resources known as the means of production, they are not enough for you to be able to produce goods and services. You need people to use them. And this is where labor power comes in. And this brings us to the next, which is the forces of production. The forces of production refers to the combination of the means of production with labor power, that is, the human effort and skills used in work. Remember, the means of production include the land, the factory, the raw materials, the machines, etc. When we add labor power to this, which is the physical and mental effort of man, together they form what we call the forces of production. Take, for example, a factory is a means of production, but the factory alone cannot produce anything. You need workers to operate the machines. And it is only when these resources, the land and the machines, are utilized by the workers, can they be able to produce value. This is why the unity of these two, that is the means of production and labor power, gives us the forces of production. And as technology and skills improve, these forces of production also evolve and grow. We move over to the next, which is the relations of production. The relations of production describes the social and economic relationship between people in the society based on who controls the means of production, that is, the tools, the land, the resources, the machine, and all of that, and those who work on them, that is, the workers. Let's take, for example, it is referring to the relationship between who owns the means of production, those who make decisions about how production is organized, and those who does the actual work and how they are rewarded. All these are the relationship of people that exist in production. That is, those who owns and controls the means of production and those who sell their labor power for wages. And this is why it is called the relations of production, because it defines the relationship between these two. It is this relationship between those who control the means of production and those who sell their labor power for wages that defines how wealth is created and distributed in the society. Let's take, for example, in feudalism, the Lord owns the land. Remember, the land is the means of production. So the Lord owns and controls production. And the peasants, that is the serfs, worked on it for little wages. This relationship between the Lord and the serfs to the means of production, that is the land, is known as the relations of production. The mode of production. The mode of production is referring to the combination of the forces of production and the relations of production into one unified system. Remember, the forces of production are the land, the resources, the machines, the technology, and even the people used to create things. While the relations of production, just like we explained now, refers to the relationship between those who owns and controls the means of production and those who have just their labor power, such as in capitalism, where the capitalist owns the means of production, that is the factory, and then the workers have just their labor power. It is this combination of these forces of production and the relations of production that gives us the mode of production, just as represented on the screen. The forces of production, you have the land, you have technology, you have factory, you have labor power being used. And then in the relations of production, you have the relationship between the owners of the means of production, and the workers who have just their labor power. The combination of this gives us the mode of production. It is this mode of production that determines how a society functions, and it is basically how a society organizes the process of producing the things it needs, such as the food, the clothing, the shelter, etc. Examples of the mode of production include feudalism, and with time we moved over to capitalism and then socialism. All these are the examples of the mode of production. It will be worthy to note that the contradiction between the forces of production and the relations of production brings about change in the mode of production. Let's explain this by giving an example. For example, feudalism is a mode of production. Remember, the emphasis of feudalism was on land. The forces of production were simple tools like the hoes, the cutlass, and also manual labor. The relations of production under feudalism was between the lord, who owns the land, that is the means of production, and the serfs who worked on it for wages. But over time, the forces of production in feudalism began to advance from simple tools like the hoes and the cutlass into more efficient tools and technology, such as the steam engine, the windmill, the power looms. This advancement contradicted the relations of production in feudalism, which was based on land ownership. This is as feudalism couldn't support the growing demand for mass production, and this led to another mode of production, which is capitalism. And then in this capitalism, the forces of production advanced to include machine, factories, technology, which enabled this mass production. And then the relations of production also shifted to the capitalists, that is the bourgeoisie, owning this means of production, which are the factories and the machine, and the workers, that is the proletariat, selling their labor for wages. So hope you can see that it is the forces of production, that is the tools, the technology, and the labor, that evolved and caused the shift from feudalism to capitalism. So the transition happened because the technological advancement in the forces of production outgrew the feudal system, which gave rise to capitalism. And this brings us to the end of this video. A little summary of what we've done. We're able to say that the means of production refers to those things we used in producing, like the resources, the machines, and the tools, and the technology, etc. While the forces of production refers to the combination of this means of production with labor power, which is the human effort used in production. And then the relations of production talks about the relationship between those who owns this means of production and those who have just their labor power. And then finally, the mode of production refers to the combination of these forces of production and the relations of production. This put together shapes how the system of the society operates. In case you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video. Thanks.